You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the resistance. Tuesday, January 22nd. We are live for the next 3 hours. I'm Dean Obeidallah, hope to be your MBFF. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah. You can watch right now, if you so choose, Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, live streaming, or drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com. Hope you had a good weekend. Lot to cover. Some people went to the Women's March. I hope if you did go to that it was a good time, it was enjoyable, sense of camaraderie and inspiration. You know, we covered it here on SiriusXM Progress with Mark Thompson and Jorge in the studio, and I called in for a little bit, but they did a great job. Daily reminder, 32 days into Donald Trump's shutdown. Over 800,000 federal workers and millions of federal contractors, it's hard to quantify, but 2 to 4 million, have not been paid in 32 days. Think about that for one moment. You did not get a paycheck for 32 days, and worst of all, you have no idea when your next paycheck's going to come. How do you manage your funds? How do you pay your mortgage, your rent, food for your children, for yourself, deductibles for health care? How do you tell your children you can't afford basic things? Can you tell them it's because of Trump's shutdown? I guess it's a hard sell to a little kid who doesn't know what's going on, but painful nonetheless. And that's where we are. And now we're hearing Trump might not do the State of the Union in the House of Representatives because Nancy Pelosi did not officially cancel it, but suggested he doesn't do it there. He might do it as a rally somewhere. I hope the national news does not carry a Trump rally on all the networks. That would be irresponsible, to say the least. And by the way, State of the Union is called for in Article 2, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. That's where it comes from. It does not say when it has to be. It says, quote, the president, quote, shall from time to time give to Congress information on the State of the Union. I guess arguably it could be anywhere, but that makes little sense. It's generally been a tradition since FDR to be in Congress. So we'll see what happens. If he wants to do a rally of 20,000 people down in the South somewhere, I hope our networks don't carry it. I think CNN and MS will because it's good for ratings. And of course, Fox will. And Donald Trump on Saturday put out an offer for the wall, for the shutdown, which was ridiculous. But here is Stephen Colbert last night on his show talking about Donald Trump and the shutdown. Here's clip number 1.
800,000 government employees have either been furloughed or forced to work without pay. Trump hasn't forgotten them, though, tweeting, "To all of the great people who are working so hard for our country and not getting paid, I say, thank you. You are great patriots." They're not volunteering to work for free. You made them work for free by shutting down the government. You might as well have tweeted, "Thank you, great patriots. Please accept this tweet in lieu of a paycheck. Quick tip, tell your landlord Mexico's going to pay your rent."
Unreal. And then here was Colbert on Donald Trump's offer, which was a waste of time, but he made the offer just to try to say, look, I'm trying to negotiate. Here's clip number 2.
Specifically, in exchange for his border wall, Trump offered to restore DACA and TPS protections for 3 years, which is weird, okay, since they're protections that he himself took away. Okay, here's the offer. You know those 2 hostages I took? Give me the cash and I'll give you the hostages temporarily. Then I get them back. Now, Democrats somehow did not fall for it. In fact, I don't know how. How did they not? So you want to rub the steak sauce on my head and I put my own head in the alligator's mouth? No, thank you. In fact, Speaker Pelosi rejected the deal before the president even announced it. She said no before Trump even asked. A move known in Washington as the Melania.
The Melania. So, by the way, we'll talk about it in the third hour tonight. It's Tuesday, third hour. We do our Law and Disorder segment. We're very happy that Danny Savalas will be with us for the hour. We'll talk about the 2 Supreme Court decisions today. The one on the Donald Trump's bigoted transgender ban, the ban of transgender Americans who want to serve in our military, who have more courage in 1 hour than Donald Trump will have his entire life. And we'll talk about the DACA decision, which completely undercuts Donald Trump's offer to extend DACA, because in effect, today's decision by the Supreme Court not to hear the DACA lower court decision on an expedited matter essentially means they're not going to hear it for like a year. We won't get a decision. So that's extended DACA. I know it's not the greatest thing for young people who are in DACA, who are DACA recipients. It's not absolute guarantee, but in all likelihood, it gives them a year, and hopefully we can make some negotiations to work on that. And yesterday was MLK Day. And, I watched a great documentary called King in the Wilderness about Martin Luther King. And what was interesting was that you had Dr. King and his supporters marching peacefully on the streets and for voting rights and Civil Rights Act, walking. And on the other side of the street were white opponents, white supremacists, who were waving the Confederate flag. And when you see that, there's no debate that it's about history. It's about hate. They were using that Confederate flag to taunt Dr. King and the African Americans, while you can hear people calling them N-words while carrying the Confederate flag. And here's how I look at it. I look at today, the MAGA hat is the equivalent of the Confederate flag. It's not about policy any longer. It is a symbol of hate. And we saw a huge explosion in the media about this MAGA kids with their MAGA hat and their MAGA gear down in Washington, D.C. And the story was not as simple as it was first reported. That is definitely true. I mean, you just had the kid with the MAGA hat and a Native American older man, Nathan Phillips, standing there drumming. And the only saw was this little clip, and there was no context. And it seemed like this kid just went after this Native American man on purpose. In reality, that's really what happened, folks. Let's be blunt. That's what happened. But there's context, and I think it's fair to give people the context to understand it. The students were from Covington Catholic High School in Kentucky. They went to participate in the March for Life rally, or as I call the March for Christian Sharia law, because that's what that's about. It's Christian Sharia law. They're trying to turn the Bible into our law. And in the full video, it could be seen before the incident with Mr. Phillips and this young kid that there were a group of black Israelites who were yelling slurs about a lot of people, but definitely at the kids from the high school. And they were taunting them, and there's zero doubt about that. And in the video, if you didn't see the whole thing, one of the high school students, not the one with the hat, another one jumps in front of his classmates there and takes off his shirt, and they do a big school cheer and chant. And then Mr. Phillips walks through the crowd with a drum. You hear it drumming off camera. That's literally how it breaks down. You hear it drumming off camera. Then Mr. Phillips in the camera comes through, several people with drums, and he walks in the crowd, and you can hear a voice actually say he came to the rescue right there in real time. Someone knew Mr. Phillips was there coming to the rescue with the drum. The Native American man was actually trying to make peace between the two groups because it was escalating and it was getting apparently very ugly. Then people follow Mr. Phillips, so you can't see whatever specifically happened for a few seconds. But here is Mr. Phillips on CNN, a U.S. Marine veteran, explaining what he saw and what he heard. So here's clip number 3.
That is Nathan Phillips, an Omaha tribe elder and another drummer. Phillips says it was their attempt to thwart potential violence. The kids danced to it. They began chanting along.
I realized I had put myself in a really dangerous situation. There's here's a group of people who were angry at somebody else, and I put myself in front of that.
Phillips, a Vietnam veteran, walks around. Other students avoid him until you see him come face to face with the student who has now gone viral.
And that's the clip we all saw. And by the way, it's been reported Mr. Phillips did not actually go to Vietnam. He was definitely in the U.S. Marine Corps, everything I've read, a veteran of the U.S. Marines. He just didn't actually get sent out to serve in Vietnam. And Mr. Phillips, that was the voice you heard there in between Sarah Seidner, the CNN reporter. And he said afterwards, I don't like the word hate. I don't like even saying it, but it was hate unbridled. It was like a storm. Another witness helped shed some light. She said her name's Kaya Tatiano, a student at University of District of Columbia, who was there. She said the teens in this group were chanting, "Build a wall" and Trump 2020. In the video, you can't hear that. I don't doubt her. I don't think she would just lie for the sake of lying. But she said you could hear people yelling, "Build a wall" in 2020. She said she did not feel safe in that circle of people there, and that when Mr. Phillips was walking, the kid with the red hat refused to get out of his way. Like he was trying to part the crowds and keep them separated, and every other student did move away. He, Nick Sandman, as we got to know, that's his name, stood right there, and that's the video we saw. So even with context, you get a sense that Nick Sandman was making a point. He was there wearing his MAGA hat with his MAGA friends, and they were not going to move away. Now, to be again fair, Nick Sandman put out a statement saying that Black Israelites were saying hateful things, calling them racists and bigots and crackers and other things. And he added, this is interesting, he goes, I did not witness or hear any students chant build that wall or anything hateful or racist at any time. I think it's interesting that even a MAGA hat high school student understands that build the wall is the same as a racist statement. Because he said, I didn't hear any student chant build that wall or anything hateful or racist. So in his view, in his mind, you can just see how his mind's working. Build that wall is a sound of racism and hate. And even though he's a MAGA kid, as a younger person, I think he kind of gets that. I think it's kind of interesting there. And then he went on to say in a long statement that Mr. Phillips came through, he drummed through the crowd, and he said everyone parted for him. This is kind of weird in his own statement. Everyone parted. I didn't see anyone block his path. Then he said he locked eyes with me and approached me, coming within inches of my face. He played the drum the entire time in my face. So what he's saying here, and what he's admitting essentially, is that Mr. Phillips walked towards him. He didn't move like everyone else. He stood there. He was going to stand his ground. And what I really think what happened here, I think it's pretty clear now. And again, I'm based on what I've seen. I could be wrong. These high school students were going back and forth with the Black Israelites. The high school students were angry. They were taunted. But they didn't have the courage to go up to the Black Israelites and say anything to their face. But when an older Native American came through, at least one there had no problem standing in his face. And I would doubt he would have that courage if it was one of the Black Israelites. But it was an older Native American, he did stand there. Now, Trump may or may not invite them to the White House. It's disputed stories on that. It's interesting that Nick Sandman's mother said that it was the Black Muslims that caused the problems. The Black Israelites are not Muslim, but what does it matter? She literally said it was the Black Muslims. And you get a sense of what this family is about a little bit. The idea of Black and Muslim are bad to them, so it was the Black Muslims. You don't need to know the real extent of who's there. You're a Trump supporter. You don't like blacks, you don't like Muslims. You put it together, why not, right? But here's everything. I just gave you the reality of it so everyone knows the facts if you care. Trump tweeted about it today. Let me be blunt, though. It's 2019. If you were wearing a Make America Great hat, a MAGA hat publicly, you were telling the world nothing about policy. You're not saying I'm wearing this hat because I want lower taxes. You're not wearing that hat saying I want smaller government or less regulations. You are wearing that hat because you like what Donald Trump stands for. And it's not about governmental policies. You like Donald Trump because he stands for racism and bigotry and sexism, period. To me, the MAGA hat, that's what it means in 2019. If you're wearing it, you're saying, I support Donald Trump's racism, his bigotry, and his sexism, period. It's not about policy. No one can call here and go, I wear a MAGA hat because I want lower taxes for the wealthy. Really? No, you don't. You like Donald Trump because his white supremacy makes you finally feel good about yourself. That demographic change is happening and you're concerned. If you wear a MAGA hat, you are supporting Donald Trump's view that the white supremacists in Charlottesville were very fine people. If you wear a MAGA hat, you are saying to all that you stand with Donald Trump when he mocked Dr. Christine Ford for his audience, to everyone laughing. That you're saying you stand with Donald Trump when he defended Rob Porter, his aide, who beat his 2 ex-wives, and you wished Rob Porter well without showing any compassion for the women. That's what you stand for. If you wear a MAGA hat, you're saying I am down with banning transgender Americans from serving in our military because somehow, in my view of my religion, that's the way it should be. If you wear a MAGA hat, you're saying I want to demonize Muslims and Latinos. I want to build a wall to make sure only the right kind of people come to this country, and I'm not talking about their qualification, I'm talking about their skin color. That's what the MAGA hat stands for. Let's not play games. This is not 2016 during the campaign when you could have worn the MAGA hat and it could have been a Republican thing. In 2019, if you're wearing it, you are saying, I stand with Donald Trump on these issues. It's not Republican issues. You wear the stupid elephant. You want to do that. You want to wear a Ronald Reagan hat. You're because you like Ronald Reagan and what he stood for. Donald Trump, to sum him up, There's no disputing. There's no game. I'm not being partisan or hyperbolic. Donald Trump stands for one thing for his base. It's a celebration of white supremacy, even if they don't know it, some of them. And we have to update the definition of white supremacy in 2019. It's not the same as the past. That's why a lot of them will deny it. It's not white supremacy in the sense that I'm going to burn a cross on someone's lawn or shoot someone for trying to vote. That's different. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about white supremacy in the sense of literally keeping the demographics from shifting in this nation. It is white supremacy mathematically. It is literally white supremacy. That's what it's about. And perhaps there'll be another term for that. It'll morph out of this. But it is white supremacy, nonetheless. And that's what Donald Trump is about. And if you think, well, you're being unfair, look, study after study, as I've written about in articles and talked about in the show, after the election showed it was not economic anxiety moving his base. It was white anxiety. It was a term loss of status in the reports. The loss of status was the loss of majority status in this nation. That's what motivates you to wear a MAGA hat in today's day and age. You know, on Friday, we talked about in the What Just Happened segment, a new Pew poll on Friday that came out saying younger people, Generation Z, which Nick Sandmann is in, they're more progressive than millennials. Yet 30% of them still support Donald Trump. Well, we found one. And if you think the bigotry and racism of Donald Trump ends when he leaves, and if you think the only ones who subscribe to that are 50 and 60 and 70-year-old people, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself. You saw in Charlottesville, you see what this guy is about here, Nick Sandmann, and I'm not equating him with the guys in Charlottesville who drove a car into people. But the idea of supporting Donald Trump, wearing the MAGA hat with your friends, and he stood up to that guy, that Native American who was brown, in his face. And to me, it's something that Donald Trump would be proud of. And in fact, he was, because he tweeted about it, calling it somehow this was about fake news. It wasn't, my friends. This is where we are. The MAGA hat is the new Confederate flag. And I think as his base gets smaller and smaller and his approval polls are going down, his average number is now 40, it's locked there, and his disapproval keeps going up and up and up. People see it. They see what it's about. He will always have that 35, 38%. We've learned a lot about our own country. So, look, you're my guest right to the top of the hour. We got a lot of guests tonight. We have Congresswoman Yvette Clarke from New York will be joining us. Governor Phil Murphy from Jersey. We pre-recorded, and we're going to have that. And the third hour, Danny Savalas is here. But you're my guest now, 866-997-4748. Be right back after this. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.